And welcome to Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw, and this evening I'm speaking with Ian Belshaw, the author of Wood for the Trees, a wonderful first novel by a debut Australian author. Thank you for joining us, Ian.
Thanks, Bradley. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, mate. Pleasure. And tell me, let's go straight to it. Tell us what Wood for the Trees is about for the viewers.
Wood for the Trees. It's a very Australian story. It's something of a modern day bushranger yarn, I guess you might say. Focuses on a young man in the modern world who gets this crazy idea in his head that he might want to be a bushranger like his heroes from the past. Wow. And so that takes him on all sorts of different pursuits and issues as he tries to replicate the way things used to be. Then there's also a policeman who ends up on his trail, and sort of we follow both of them through the Australian landscape as they, one pursues the other and reaches the conclusion.
Wow. Yeah, no, you've written it very well, very easy to read, but very enticing in the sense of engaging the characters. Now, a question, what made you think of putting the concept of a bushranger, like the history of Australia, that forgotten era, into such a modern context, and then have that character develop?
Yeah, it's not an era that's forgotten to me. Not that I was around then, but I've always been interested in Australian history, and the bushrangers there was always some appeal there in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I just struck on this idea at some stage that what if someone these days decided they wanted to do what they did back then? It sounds ridiculous, and in many ways it is ridiculous because the times now are different to they were then. So that's kind of where it came from.
No, it was clever. It was good, and like I said, unique. So, when you're writing, do you find it an energizing aspect or exhausting? Do you put so much energy into creating that you're tired, or do you find it you could go for days without sleep?
Energizing. Not that I went for days without sleep, but any sort of creative process, I find it's exhilarating.
Yep. Was it difficult to create these characters to conceive them and develop them into their obvious actions and motives?
Yes and no. Conceiving them itself wasn't that difficult. It actually started out as a short story, and I think I had too much material there. It sort of deserved a bit more than just a short story.
Mm-hmm.
And so it evolved from there. And but the character development took a little bit of work, and I hadn't plotted it out so much. So a lot of it was just making it up as I went along, following the story myself, getting engaged myself.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a little bit of work involved in figuring out where these characters should go and what should comprise them as individuals.
Yeah. Did you get tripped up at all in that process? Not planning it out? Like sort of find yourself going, sometimes, I hear that new authors will write themselves into a little corner. It's not detrimental, but it's just an awareness. They suddenly realize, hang on, I've gone too far one way. Maybe I need to just adapt. Did you find that element as well?
A little bit. It was a fairly broad story in some ways. So there wasn't really a storyline that could get too confined that I couldn't get out of it. I was certainly conscious of where it had been before, and I had to go back and reread a few things from time to time.
Yeah.
But I didn't quite find that I got myself trapped in a corner at any stage.
And what sort of research did you do to adapt to, say, the historical factors and, of course, police factors that are current? So you've got two elements of the process of, psychologically happening. How did you research those elements for that?
So a fair bit of it, in terms of the history side of things, they're things that I have some knowledge about from reading over the years, and so I'll go back and touch up on some of the facts. I mean, it's not overly dense from a historical point of view. There are a lot of historical references, but it's not an out and out historical novel.
Yeah.
The policing side of things, I have some familiarity. I have some contacts in the police force.
Yeah.
So some awareness of how they operate as well. I took some liberties as well, I would suggest, but yeah, sort of.
You're right.
Exactly. So I wasn't in the library for months on end doing a lot of background. Those things, they needed to make sense, but they weren't the actual driver of the novel.
Was there any particular bushranger you sculpted or idolised in the story, or did you have a sort of a general picture of bushrangers? So they were just sort of like the theory of what they were in those times? Or was it
generalised a little bit? The character's hero, his main bushranging idol is Ben Hall, who was sort of known as a gentleman bushranger, I suppose, up in New South Wales. Probably after Ned Kelly, the most famous bushranger from those times. So he was the main one, and there are a few references to places he went during his criminal career. So he was probably the main. There are other parts that are an amalgam of different bushrangers as well.
Good. And so when you've constructed this story, what for you, without giving anything away, was the hardest scene for you to have to write? Like, what did you find the most challenging scene in the story or chapter?
It's a good question. It's the hardest part, I think, was the characterization of the two main characters in there, and trying to. It was easy in some ways because they were quite distinct. So it was quite easy to paint one in one manner and the other in another manner. I was also quite conscious of the fact that humans are complicated beasts. So no one's pure evil, no one's pure good. So you'll find there's a lot of conflict within the characters. So it was the characterization and making them believable characters with some level of depth. That was a challenge.
Yeah. And this was your first full novel?
First full novel, yes.
Yeah. And when you started it, you said it was a short story. So how long ago did you incubate this idea and develop it, and how long did it take to write into the whole book?
Probably. So it was released in October this year. It was probably a couple of years ago that it really started. But once the idea formed in my mind, it didn't take too long to get going, and then it took a little bit to get some proper momentum. But once I was sort of chipping away a little bit all the time to get it done.
And how many, say, hours a day or a week would you write? Like, did you get a lot of time to it, or did you find it was more a hobby-based interest to start with? You didn't sort of evolve the idea of publishing it straight away?
It's a hobby-based interest.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I did some of it at work. In quiet times at work, I'd just sit there and rather than searching the internet, I suppose, I'd try to do something productive, and I spent a bit of time I'd knock out a paragraph here and there. Then I'd come home and do a bit more as well. But working full time, so I didn't have a completely clean slate to work with in terms of time.
Yeah. So how long did it take you from that then? Like, I know you said over 2 years, but what was your first draft? And you sort of said to yourself, I'm going to scale this out to a novel, and worked on that project. How long did that take you? 6 months?
What was you hit the nail on the head. About 6 months from
that's what I estimate with new writers. It's generally that first 6 months, especially working full time, trying to give yourself the hours you need as much as work and life balance, and then enjoy the hobby. So well done. And in that process, you learned, I guess, the craft of writing. Had you studied writing or learned writing before? I know in school we all sort of had that element and did well, but I'm just wondering, did you look at writing as a serious interest, as you say, a hobby, or was it it just evolved and happened as you enjoyed it as you started? It wasn't so much that you planned to write.
It's something that evolved. I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed words and language and all that sort of thing, and description and playing with words and all that sort of thing. So no formal training or anything like that. Really just an interest that motivated me to have a go at doing something a bit more formal.
Well done. Okay. And you took the step to put it into publication. How was that process for you? How did you find, setting yourself up to say, okay, I've got something here I've written, and now investigating that process of publication. How was that for you?
I was very lucky. A good friend of mine was helpful to edit it for me. So I had a reasonable edit, and she has some skills as an editor. So by the time I was ready to send it around to people, it had been touched up a little bit.
Good.
Then it was a matter of going out to different publishers, and not all of them encourage writers, especially new writers, to get in touch. So I was sort of pinpointing those that would accept submissions and then sending them off and waiting to hear back. So it was an arduous process. That said, I didn't expect anyone to fall over or line up to sign me as a new author. I mean, I understand it's a pretty tough market out there, and these companies want to put their money in a place that they think they're going to get some return. So I kept searching around, and eventually Shoreline Publishing came up.
Yeah, no, we were happy to help you because, I mean, you've got a story there that's a really good pilot and project for a first-time author, and that's one of the things we like to see is you growing into that phase as an author too, taking the next step, so you now have a platform or a benchmark for you to set up for the next books that you want to write in the future. So with that in mind, so you've gone through the first draft, a bit of editing and the design and working out a story plot, creating the novel, and then going through the publishing process. What for you in that whole artistic exercise was probably the hardest part for you to learn, to adapt to?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Great. If there wasn't anything significant, I mean, it's just easy. That's nice. I mean, it's good. I mean, that's a lucky streak. Yeah.
It wasn't so much easy. It was a matter of things coming up and you just do them, and that's the process you go through.
Yeah. So the editing you found not too painful. A lot of new writers usually find they almost give up writing when they get their edit draft back. They think, oh my gosh, what's happened to my book? It wasn't that bad, surely, but it's a productive, constructive edit usually. So how did you feel when you first got that sort of first draft back with the edit?
When I first got it back, and there were comments and deletions, and they were all the way down the manuscript. For a moment, I was like, "Come on, it's not that bad." But then you take a step back and you actually go through it, and you realise, okay, well, they've got a point there. Maybe I don't agree with them here, but that's okay. So you learn to actually realise that this is helpful. This is trying to get a better product. And having gone through it once, next time I'll approach it much differently. You said, and to be honest, I've actually, from the edits, I know that the next writing I do will actually be better because I've picked up on certain things that the editors commented on from my writing. So it's actually a really good process.
And that's awesome. That's what you need to adapt, is understanding that. And the reason I'm asking these sort of questions is to help other writers who might be joining us today, or to see this and see what it's taken you to understand and evolve into an actual published author. There are steps, there are challenges, and there are disciplines that sometimes you have to learn. But it's good that you've adapted to it very quickly and easily. You've taken them all on board in your stride, which is you also need to do to keep your artistic flair. So
that's right. And I would say, in terms of what to say to new authors or people thinking of writing a book, you get to that editing process, and it's difficult because you can have something that's solely yours, not open to any criticism. You put it out there, people are going to comment on it, and that might be parts that they don't agree with or they think you can improve. It can be confronting at the start, but you just got to try to see it as a positive process you can actually use and work with.
Absolutely. And I think that's the message there too, is that the editor generally has your interests at heart. They're trying to make you that credible, better writer without a silly mistake being, the downfall to such a good book.
Exactly.
So they are being very tenacious and very, and really highlighting things. And you say you don't have to always agree with them, but at least making you aware of that challenge is that point is.
Yeah, that's right.
So I always find that editing is something to embrace, as you said, because it gives you a chance to review your own work and even make it better, and that's the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
So what would you say through the writing experience that you've developed a writing quirk? I like to ask this question. Some writers sit in certain slippers. They have to drink from certain coffee cups when they're writing. They have to have certain music on. They have to have the angled sun coming through a certain window. You have a little quirk that you might, have adapted while you were writing.
Nothing quite as romantic as that, I don't think.
Don't write on the Italian Riviera and just look out the window over the.
If only. Can you arrange that for me?
That'd be a place to write. Yeah.
No, a bit more utilitarian. I write when I can in whatever context. There are times an idea would come to me. I'd be sitting at a pub or something like that, and I get my phone out and I've got a document up on OneDrive and I can just go and edit it there. So it's very much wherever ideas come.
Is that on your phone, did you say?
Some of it I just write on my phone.
I love that. We had another author who writes on their phone. That was one of their quirks. They said they write all their book on the quirk in the cloud, on the phone in the cloud. And I went, how? Because I'm not tech savvy, so I would have absolutely no idea on how to even get my hands to coordinate on a phone. But
it wasn't my preference, and I probably only wrote a paragraph here and there on my phone. It wasn't
just sort of the thought, get that thought out.
That's the idea, exactly. Yeah, rather than
write the whole novel. Couldn't imagine doing that.
No, good luck to whoever can.
So when did you realize you wanted to write? Like, when did you sit down and say, like, I really want to pursue this element of myself, writing? When was that?
So, like a lot of kids, I wrote bad poetry as a teenager. So even at that stage, I knew I enjoyed writing. I knew it was something that I liked doing and I wanted to pursue. I played in bands for years writing lyrics. The lyrics were always as important as the music. It was always a big part of what I did. Mm-hmm. And then probably in the last decade or so, I decided I wouldn't mind trying to write some words that don't rhyme, try to write some prose.
Yeah.
And it's never as I sat down and I was like, well, this is what I want to do. This is the direction I want to head. It was more, I guess we go back to the word hobby. It was something I'd like to do, see if I can make a go of it and improve at it. And then next thing you know, I've written a longer form work. And so now we're sort of at a point where probably I certainly am more interested in writing more and pursuing it further than I had initially planned. Yeah.
And you said earlier, I think you said you drafted a few of the next books or some other projects coming up in the future for you. So you started to really look at this hobby so much as now a potential sideline that could develop. So
that's right. I enjoyed it. That's the simple fact, and not even just publication was fantastic and really really proud moment, but I really enjoyed the process of writing, and so even that was something I wanted to go back to, whether it was published or not, to get that feeling of creating and watching these words and these phrases come out from somewhere inside you. It's a pretty addictive feeling.
Yeah. And if you're good at it too, you should. We always encourage yourself to always, give yourself that enjoyment. One of the things that struck me, just as what you said earlier, was, and I'm just intrigued to ask the question: when you've written in so many levels, you said that you started in music, writing songs and lyrics, and obviously that and poetry and lyrics are different to a story format, as you said. So how did you feel about expanding that when you went through that process? Did you, consciously, as you said, you did look at that, but did you notice that it was a different way? You had to really construct your brain set into your creative differently because the words and music were so different an art?
To a point, and I probably thought it would be harder than it was in a way, because I was very used to writing things that had a strict meter or had everything was rhyming, and there's still quite a lyrical quality to quite a bit of my prose writing as well. I think that just follows on because I listen to the words and the way they sound together rather than just what they mean. So there's a lot that goes into it, and there were a few things that editors picked up. There were times when I think it was almost a little bit too lyrical, and so I did slip back into some of those tropes from poetry. But I think once I did it for a little bit. I think you write a novel, you find a bit of a rhythm after a while, and
Yeah.
I managed to find my feet in prose, I guess, moving away from just rhyming meter.
Good. No, that's great. And yeah, it shows as a natural talent. I haven't, to be honest, heard your music, but I'm sure that it's going to have sort of the same discipline that you've shown in your writing of the book. So that writing creative flair in you is inbred. So for you, when you were younger, so going from music, so you obviously, did you want to be in a band and musician and focus on that? So writing was a later sort of cause, is that what you're saying? So you wanted, what would you want to be when you were younger as a kid? Tell us that.
Yeah, musician would have been first, and I suppose because a musician, look, you don't have to, but the nature of what I was doing was playing in bands with other people, which has its benefits, it has its frustrations as well, but mostly benefits.
Yeah.
But then you're working with other people to create something, rather than writing, which is quite a selfish pursuit. You're just doing it for yourself. So I guess, while I was playing more music than I am now, and I'm still playing music, but not quite as much.
Yeah.
That was more the focus. I'm not sure I felt I had the time or the commitment to do something outside of that as well.
Yeah. So in your life, for you, whether it be even an idol or someone in your life directly, who would you identify with that brings out that in you, the best of you?
It's a tough question. I wouldn't say I have any particular idols. In terms of those who bring out the best of me, my partner and my friends.
Yeah.
That's probably it. I probably look a bit closer to home for a lot of those things.
And how do they do that for you? Is it a trust, an honesty, a thing that they acceptance? Sometimes bringing out your best is sometimes the hardest thing to let people see and do for you as well.
Yeah, it is. Encouragement's certainly a big thing. I suppose for a lot of people, encouragement, it means a lot. Honest encouragement. There are times when you might waver in terms of your dedication to something, and a little bit of a boost goes a long way.
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate that people around me who've been very supportive and very interested in what I'm doing. So that's helped me a lot.
Yeah. And you said earlier too that did they get to read that earlier drafts before the editing, or were they more you waited, you held it back, and then you showed them when it was really at a better stage? How trusting of their advice were you, or of their opinion were you?
Probably not as much as I should have been.
Yeah.
I was fairly closed off with it. I didn't really share. My partner read it after I'd finished it, before it had been edited.
Mm-hmm.
Another friend of mine had a read of it as well, but I wasn't sharing it so much to get feedback. The reality is often your friends are not the most objective people in terms of the feedback they'll give.
Some may be polite. That's the challenge with friends.
Exactly. That's right.
Nice, but it's not as productive as you need to have as improvement of a writing.
That's right, and that's where having an external editor really helps, because they don't have the same hang-ups that your friends might have.
Yeah. Yes. So how did they respond to it though? Were they impressed? Were they happy? Were they encouraging? What was the support you got?
Surprised.
Yeah.
I suppose.
You hadn't told them that you'd written a book? You just sort of had shown them when it was ready? Is that what you... Wow.
Some I told, some I hadn't.
Okay.
So it's probably a little bit secretive with some people. And inevitably, unless you publicise these things, there'll always be some people who don't really know until it happens.
Yeah.
So they were surprised, but everyone's thrilled, and I think sort of my circle of friends, there are a lot of musicians and all that sort of thing, but no one's written a book, so it's a bit it's different.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure they're proud and happy, because it is an achievement. So tell me, there's a question where when you edit a book, sometimes you have, and again, please don't give anything away, but what for you was the hardest to take out of this book So you've got, like, what we've got is the book, and we know what's in it.
Mm.
But tell us the one thing that maybe you had to remove that was hard for you as the author.
Yeah. Interesting. So the hardest, it's difficult because there are times when you might have a sentence, you think, oh, this is a great sentence, really good. Then it goes to the editing process and they say, well, come on, it doesn't really make sense. What are you getting at here? And one good thing with editing I've found so far, with Steph, who did it for Shoreline, there are ideas that they're not hard and fast rules. You have to change this. A lot of them are suggestions, so you have to take them on board. But the hardest probably. I threw in a few obscure words. Some of them I kept, some of them I pushed to keep.
Yeah.
There are others that maybe they disrupted the flow of the book. So it was something I wanted to put in there. I'd written them in there initially.
Yeah.
Common sense dictated that they probably should go, but it wasn't easy to do.
No, that's right. I mean, it is hard to write in your voice, but you've also got to accept and write in the reader's voice. You've got to understand the differences that people interpret words as, and yours may be, preferences in words, but readers have the need to just have it not intrusive in the flow, and I agree. So, but at least
right.
you, that's another learning where you've looked at and analysed that writing style, where you've kept it to still being honest and still being realistic to the story, but making it a comfortable ride for the reader more so. And that's what really being an author is really writing for readers more than writing for self. And that's where
you want to put your story across so people can understand it.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of writers, new writers in particular, get challenged with starting to develop their own styles, is trying to understand how they're interpreted by readers. And that's where, as you say, editors are the reader. And that's where your feedback is. So
that's right.
With the plan for your next books, is it your intent to have them as standalone books, or are you looking at developing things that are seeded into familiarity with your characters or with your stories or references that you might write through your writing career? Some writers have that. They put little red herrings or rabbits, whatever they're called, through the storylines. Easter eggs, that's the word I was thinking of. So they'll drop little similarities between all their books. Is that something you see as yourself in your craft? Did you develop this next phase of writing?
Possibly. The next work I'm embarking on, I've written a little bit here and there. It's very, very early days.
Yep.
It won't be. We're not looking at a sequel or anything like that at the moment. But there'll be similar themes, similar Australian themes and setting.
Good.
I haven't set out with the intention that there will be common threads between what I write.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting concept, and I think chances are there could be a few subtle connections between different works that I do.
Yeah. No, I like that. Sometimes, and I know a lot of readers do too. They enjoy finding those little places out and building trivia about an author they enjoy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, to give you one of the big names of Stephen King, he does a habit of, he'll drop a character from book to book. He'll have different characters interacting or walking through scenes in books at references, because he mostly writes in one town. Anyway, Castlemaine, I think it is, or Maine, is generally his area of, what's it called?
That's right, around Salem, that sort of area.
Salem's and all, so he has all those sort of areas where all the characters eventually will wander through their stories.
Yeah, I love a bit of self-referencing as always. That's a little quirky thing. It's kind of nice to do.
Yeah, no, I reckon it'll work well. If you can master that into that, that'd be fantastic. So have you had a chance yet to gain any feedback from readers, being that the book's only just come out the last few weeks, several weeks, a month actually? Have you had any chance to have feedback from?
Not a lot of feedback yet. The feedback's mainly been from family and friends.
Yep.
And they've all been they've been effusive in what they've told me. Again, there's that objectivity that they don't have quite as much as the broader reader.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to other people reading it, reviewing it, all that sort of thing as it gets out a little bit more widely.
Good. So what he's saying, people, is buy his book and give him a review. Good job. So tell us, Ian, the book, Wood for the Trees, what would you want people to take away from it? What are you hoping that the readers do get out of this wonderful book?
Yeah. I hope they take out an Australian story, a distinctly Australian story that, I guess, takes an element from our history, puts it in the present, but also acts as, I guess, a look into the psychology of a couple of people just going through their lives, trying to figure things out the best they can, and all in a distinctly Australian setting as well. So there's an element of sort of a bit of an Australian Western kind of feel to it. So if people take that sort of thing out of it, there's good and there's evil, there's conflict, and there's also this beautiful landscape around us as well. So hopefully people enjoy the writing in it and they enjoy the setting.
Fantastic. Well done. So when you think about when you were younger, say, if you were able to go back and tell your younger self anything about being a writer, what was the one or two things at the most you would say to them? What's the points that you'd quickly share to your younger self about becoming a writer?
Probably would have told myself to do it a bit sooner.
Yeah. What are you waiting for? Get into it.
Not that there's any rush.
Yeah.
But I would have told myself, because I don't think I believed I had the patience to write a novel. And so if I went back, I would say to myself, well, you could have had the patience to do it, or tell myself as a younger person, writing a novel is something you invest a lot of time in. You're not going to finish it overnight, but you can work your way through it. It's not an insurmountable task.
No, and it is a good achievement that you've done. So yeah, we're looking forward to the next ones coming up. We might wrap it up if I may. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Ian, for sharing and talking with us like that. That's wonderful.
Thanks,
and for everyone out there too, sorry to say, but it is available. Wood for the Trees is available in every bookstore and everywhere it's sold. In Melbourne here in particular, it's Metropolis Bookstore is available, and Eltham Bookshop, I believe, has copies as well. But online and anywhere in your local area, nationally, around Australia and New Zealand, you can buy it. So please grab a copy. Wood for the Trees by Ian Belshaw. And we look forward to your feedback, of course. Thank you again, Ian.
Thanks, Bradley. Really appreciate it. And to anyone who watches or listens to this, all the best, and please support Australian literature.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And thank you. Bless everyone, and have a great night. Thank you.